We were a very strong advocate for tech companies that at government and various levels within all levels of provincial, federal, municipal. But to truly put Waterloo Region on a global map and start to attract more talent and retain the talent that we did have, because there was a lot of competition from the Silicon Valley companies coming up and taking a lot of our especially our UW talent away from us. We thought we needed some government money to really amplify our brand, our messaging, and start to be, recognized as a great community to not just start a company, but keep it here and continue to scale and grow here as well. So today, we're a member-based organization with over 1,400 companies that are members of Communitech. Most of those members are within certainly the Kitchener-Waterloo region, but we have a number of companies that have relationships and memberships with other innovation hubs out of Toronto, and they also take advantage and leverage a lot of our services as well. Oh, my keypad is just super touchy today. Communitech Outpost is a program we launched just, I don't know, like a couple of months just before the pandemic hit. So it's been around for just over 2 years. It's an employer of record service. So what that means at its core is that we handle all of the back-end payroll and benefits administration so that companies can easily hire the talent they need wherever they are in the world. So it allows you to hire within a matter of weeks instead of months. You don't have to have a legal entity in order to hire that individual in the country that you're obviously looking to hire them in. And as the employer of record, we're handling all of the employment contracts, any kind of HR support, as well as compliance in the countries that you're respectively hiring in. So this particular program, while a lot of Communitech's programs are requiring Communitech membership, this particular program does not. And it also does not require you to be a tech company like some of our other programs. So this one is truly open to any Canadian company looking to hire international talent. And it's open across any vertical or sector as well. Just to give you a little bit of the history on how the Communitech Outpost program came to be, Dave Caputo, who is our current chair of the Communitech board, he's a serial entrepreneur himself. Many years ago, he started a company called Pickstream, and he had the added benefit of an investor called Newbridge Networks, who essentially acted as his employer of record. When Dave needed to hire somebody in Brazil or Argentina or wherever he was expanding, Newbridge Networks had legal entities in those countries, so they would hire for Dave and essentially bill back to Dave the cost of payroll and whatnot in order to keep those employees. So when Dave sold this company and started another company, he didn't have Newbridge Networks backing him, and quickly realized the challenges and roadblocks he hit in trying to hire talent outside of Canada, because they really do require you to have that legal entity unless you go the contractor route. And going the contractor route obviously opens the companies up to a lot of risk as well when it comes to compliance and adhering to the local country's labor laws. So Dave thought, if I've experienced this as an entrepreneur and the challenges of trying to hire internationally, there's probably other Canadian companies out there that are experiencing the same problems. So why should Communitech not do something to kind of address this gap and fix it? So that's kind of the history behind why we started Outpost, is we were hearing from a lot of companies how difficult it really was to hire that talent, and that they often opted for the contractor route, which they knew left them open to certain risks and vulnerabilities, but they really wanted to secure the talent, so they just did contract to be a bit of a Band-Aid solution for them. Knowledge Hook was one of our very first customers to be able to use the Outpost program. And this is a local company. They're in the ed tech space. They've made great headway in the education space within Ontario, certainly and across Canada, working with various school boards. But again, as any company, they want to scale and grow. And in order to scale and grow, they wanted to start to expand in countries like Australia and Brazil, and wanted to have salespeople on the ground that obviously were familiar with culture and could meet directly with customers. So they ran into a lot of obstacles trying to hire people. and found out the Communitech Outpost program existed, and quickly started to leverage our services to be able to hire those employees and offer them competitive benefit packages as well, all with minimal risk involved, because we take care of all of the compliance and tax filings for the countries that they're hiring in. I'm sure these 4 buckets of what we've heard time and time again from founders are nothing new. So some of the global expansion problems that founders share with us are the ability to just be able to expand and go beyond Canada, because they want to not just grow their revenue in other countries, but they want to grow their talent base in new markets. So when they look to expand, they quickly run into challenges of how do we onboard those individuals in a quick and efficient way while remaining compliant, because we have to make sure that those employees are being paid and that we're adhering to those countries' labor codes and tax laws. And then how do you manage all of that talent? So that's why Outpost was created, to essentially handle those 4 big buckets of challenges that we hear time and time again. You can hire in over 160 countries through the Communitech Outpost program. We onboard very quickly, ensuring that all of our employment contracts are compliant with local labor laws, and we manage the compliance risk and have obviously an awareness of the law within the countries that we're hiring in. And certainly when you think of hiring and onboarding, there's obviously some knowledge that you need to have to even get the people working for you. But then a lot of times people don't think, well, what if I have to terminate, or what if the employee resigns? How do I handle severance? How do I handle time or notice to give? And a lot of countries outside of Canada have very unique laws that you have to adhere to, especially in the event of a termination. And obviously pay. We're handling all of the payroll, as well as making sure that all the proper tax remittances are done, and the proper employer contributions are also deducted from an employee's pay. I think I'm delayed. Okay, there we go. So in a nutshell, the Outpost program is meant to onboard international employees in weeks instead of months. You don't require a legal entity in the country that you're trying to hire in order to use the employer of record service. We handle that and act as that legal employer and have the entity. You have access to our entire team to offer HR support, payroll support, legal support throughout the entire process. We're handling all of the employment agreements, and obviously would send to you for review before anything is ever sent out to the prospective candidate. We're managing all of the payroll, like I said, ensuring that there's regulatory compliance and all of the proper tax remittances are done. And we also offer the added benefit of having you provide employees with benefit packages. I think we take for granted a lot living in Canada that we have a universal healthcare system. There are many, many countries around the world that do not. And I know a lot of employers want to be able to remain competitive in a highly competitive marketplace with this war on talent in order to be able to offer employees benefits to make it that much more attractive. And it's certainly a big reason we hear employers losing employees, even contractor employees, because as a contractor, they rarely have benefits. So, for somebody who is in high demand and they can take a contractor position or a full-time position that offers benefits, they're probably going to opt for the position that provides them benefits. And of course, being stitched in with Communitech, you also have direct access in our ecosystem to any of our national and global partners, including Trade Commissioner Service, BDC, EDC, various trade organizations, and whatnot as well. So this will give you just a snapshot of where we are hiring. So like I said, we hire in over 160 countries. Everywhere there is a dark blue is where we offer service. You can see there's a few areas shaded there in light blue that we don't yet offer service in. But again, just continuing to expand where we can hire globally. This is just an example of some of the companies that currently work with us or have worked with us and have graduated from the program. So a lot of these companies have employees in numerous countries through us. So many of them have employees in the US, and then they've also got employees kind of scattered throughout various countries around the world. Some countries, once they get to a certain size, it does make more financial sense for them to set up their own legal entity. A good example of that would be MyoVision. So they reached, I think it was about 10 to 15 employees in Germany. So it made much more sense financially for them to open up their own legal entity and then, rather than use an employer of record service like Communitech Outposts. So they're a graduate of the program. And it's great to see companies scale and grow, because again, that's the intent, is we want to be able to offer a solution to help you hire those few employees across numerous countries. And then by the time you get to that point where it now makes more financial sense for you to have your own legal entity, we're there with you every step of the way to help offboard those employees so that you can hire them full time. These are just a couple of testimonials from some of our existing customers. So Bridget is in the construction space here, another local company within Kitchener-Waterloo region, and they looked at being able to leverage the Outpost service as a way to really expand their international pool and attract that top talent no matter where they were located. They were finding, obviously, the Waterloo region area highly competitive, high salary expectations, and certainly, getting more and more intense. So they started to look beyond the Canadian borders to see, well, where else could we potentially look for talent, and is it easy to hire them? And then Vidyard is another local tech company. They've been around for quite some time. And Vidyard has a number of employees across the globe through Outposts. But one of the other reasons they chose to use Outposts was with this onset of, remote work being accepted basically anywhere in the world these days. They were starting to have some employees who expressed interest in leaving Kitchener-Waterloo, moving back to their home country. And because they're top talent, Vidyard didn't want to lose them. So they were able to use the Outpost program to retain that talent and continue have them working for Vidyard as opposed to losing them. So again, I think it's much more accepted today, just given the pandemic and how quickly everybody has had to, change and alter maybe their hiring practices and what's acceptable. So if we can retain that talent, even though they want to maybe move back to France or Portugal or wherever they're originally from, this program allows companies to help retain that talent. I mentioned additional programming. So we've got some great partnerships through the Trade Commissioner Service, BDC, EDC. Again, if any connections need to be made there, we're happy to do that and leverage our network. Through the Outpost program, we're also able to provide visa and mobility services. So again, some companies come to us saying, hey, we've got this top employee. He wants to move to Spain for a year. He doesn't have a visa. What's the process? Again, it can get, very bureaucratic very quickly. So as an added service to the Outpost program, we help manage all of the visa and mobility pieces as well, if it's required. And that's really it. That's the presentation. Certainly would love to hear if there are any questions, or if anyone wants to share, maybe a country you're looking at expanding into. Certainly happy to provide some insights and share, some of the things that I've learned over the last little bit working with the Outpost team.
Karen, that was terrific, and such an important topic, and in this market, of course, there's a lot about the talent shortage, so highly relevant to even for us to be enlightened on this program. So I will open it up to the floor, because people probably do have questions, and large or small, so feel free, if you want to put them in the chat or go off mute and raise your hand. Love to hear any comments or questions. It's always hard to be the first person, but oh, Romaine, love it.
Thank you so much for that. Let me just cry excuse for a minute. I'm not able to come off camera because I just set up my desk here a little funny and all that stuff. But a question in regards to employee management, though, because um, I work in the ocean industry, so for Ocean Supercluster, and we are looking at talent attraction and development of senior top talent. That is one of the many things that we have to tackle at this moment. So when it comes to, for example, outsourcing to an international company or to an international country, getting the talent from an international country, I think the concern for some of our SMEs would be, essentially managing them from afar, right? You did touch a bit on that. I didn't get that clearly. Could you please explain a little bit more as so that would work with Outpost?
So I would say, sit behind the scenes as the payroll administrator and benefits provider. The employee, for all intents and purposes, still reports directly into, like you as an example, Romaine, as their manager. They would still follow all of your company's policies and procedures when it comes to, managing them as an employee. When you look at performance reviews, expense management, whatever HRMS system you're using, that employee would get on. I would say, look at us as your payroll administrator, equivalent to whoever manages your payroll in Canada. We're that for international hires. But they would still, report to you and work with your organization just like any other employee. Does that answer your question?
Certainly does shed some light. Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks.
I know at one point, Karen, you had given some math around sort of working with Outposts or versus attempting to try it on your own as a company, and you contrasted that. I think it was there was something very compelling within that, and just like the kind of what you can save by directing that through you versus try to invest. So maybe if you had some thoughts around that, and I know Kathy has a question too.
Yeah. I mean, the cost to set up a legal entity in whatever country you're targeting, it's not cheap. So it is expensive. It can run upwards of, anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, depending on the country you're looking to set up that legal entity in, when you add in all of the lawyer fees and accounting fees and whatnot. And then you need to hire a team to actually be able to manage that country. So it does get quite costly quite quickly. And the Outpost team, we're just really, the fee structure that we have in place is typically a one-time setup for that employee, which typically is about $1,000 US. And then there's just a monthly recurring administrative fee that you would pay. And again, that's going to differ based on the country you're hiring in. And I can certainly share, maybe in follow-up, a little bit more detail around the fee structure, because like I said, it is different based on the country you're looking to hire in, but can range anywhere from $250 US per month per employee to $750 US per month per employee.
Great.
Yep.
Kathy?
Karen, thanks so much for coming out to the East Coast to present. I was so excited when I heard about the Outpost program a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic. It's exciting for me to see you here, and we're looking forward to the questions that people attending have, but also those that are busy head down in their businesses and are going to watch this video tonight or next week when they have, because our YouTube channel is taking off. We're pretty excited about it. I did have 3 questions. One was, has there been, you mentioned about employees, say, for example, who were immigrants to Canada who wanted to spend time outside of Canada. Say the example you gave, I think, was Spain or Brazil, which I think is a really cool benefit to offer employees, to have that flexibility to be able to spend some time maybe with their family or maybe discovering a new country, which is kind of cool. Have you had any employees that come the other way, where they've been working remotely for companies and then have decided that they'd kind of be closer to HQ, and is that something that can be managed as well?
So not yet through Outpost. Communitech does help run global talent streams. So if we do have companies who have reached out to us outside of Outpost to say, you know, I need help in trying to bring this employee that's been working for us in Spain and we want to bring them to Canada, can you help? Our kind of sister program, I would say, is Global Talent Stream. So we would refer them to that particular program and help them through that process.
Okay. And it's just for clarity, is that a program where you need to be a Communitech member to take advantage of the global talent, or is that open to? No. Okay.
Yeah, that's open to anyone as well. Yeah.
Okay. And is there anything that you've seen in the last couple of months with regards to employees from Ukraine? Is there something you're seeing in the employers that are coming to you? Is there an activation of effort around Ukrainian refugees?
So I would say there's a general feeling within the tech community that they want to be able to hire employees from the Ukraine, but they also don't want to be seen as taking advantage of it. So I think it's a very fine line they're trying to walk. They want to do good and want to be able to offer employment and help them out, obviously, in this terrible situation. But at the same time, I think they're a little bit worried about the optics of it, and that it could be seen as, well, you're taking advantage of people kind of at their lowest. So it's something that Communitech is trying to work on to say, how can we use the Outpost program to help companies and match them with employees in the Ukraine, with local employers that do want to hire the talent. So it's something we're working on. And yeah, I think we're just really trying to walk that like fine line of yeah.
And I see a bunch of other hands up, so Tara's going to shut me down now. Last question is on the recruiting side. So if we have a company that is interested in recruiting, obviously Outpost can help provide payroll services and set the company up in another country. Any suggestions or tips that you've picked up from some of your clients around the actual recruiting efforts that our founders might be interested in hearing?
So believe it or not, a lot of global employers, they're still posting on LinkedIn and Indeed. So those seem to be the two primary platforms. Now, that being said, we certainly have partnerships in other countries that are very targeted at recruiting within their local communities. So as an example, you know, Ireland, South Africa, Australia, like we've got some great connections there with local talent recruiters that, again, if you're struggling to recruit maybe in Australia or you're struggling to recruit in Ireland, just as examples, we can certainly help matchmake as well, and connect you directly with a recruiter.
Okay, well, wonderful. I think Yuji, you were next with your hand.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. This is a great overview of the talents market there. I work for a medtech company here in Halifax, and my question is around the wages right now. And as we all know, the wages in tech industry is going up in North America right now, especially in the past year or so. And I feel like this is affecting a lot of Canadian companies because Canadian tech industry doesn't necessarily pay, I think, overall higher wages compared to American counterparts. And that way, a lot of folks here realize, oh, we can actually work for American companies remotely, and like they start to do that. Do you think this affects Canadian companies to attract and retain technology workers, especially in those, technical roles, software engineers, and which is quite in a shortage right now, and to actually retain those folks in kind of Canadian workforce? And how do we mitigate that risk?
Yeah, so it's certainly something we hear a lot from our companies to say, how do we compete with the US companies when they're probably offering anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 above what we're offering? So this is where they get a little bit creative as Canadian companies and say, well, if you want to work anywhere, we can support that, and have them work anywhere in the world. Maybe they don't want to live in Canada, but still want to work for you as an organization. So again, what we're seeing is that a lot of companies are starting to offer other benefits and perks outside of the financial piece. So it's interesting. I was reading an article the other day where I've heard that one company will allow its employees to pick anywhere in the world they want to work for up to 6 months, and will support that remote work. I think one of the things that we as Canada have going for us is the fact that we do have medical health care. So again, I think for a lot of employees that are maybe attracted to the US and the big salaries that come with working in the US, I don't think they have a full picture of what it means to get sick. And if you get sick down in the US, what that means for you. So I think a lot of companies are just really trying to play up like, why is Canada different? Here's what we can offer. And that flexibility component is seemingly quite attractive right now. The more flexible you can be as an employer, I think that's something that's really attractive. But yeah, I mean, for sure. And that's why we see a lot of Canadian companies, starting to expand beyond Canada and hire talent, certainly down a lot through Latin and South America. Salaries are quite a bit lower in those countries, and they still have amazing talent. Brazil is producing a lot of technical talent. Mexico has a lot of great technical talent. So again, we're starting to see companies expand beyond just Canada and the US and start to go down through a lot of the countries that are still on that Eastern Seaboard side of things, because they really want to try and stay in that time zone. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. And just to follow up as well, we have a lot of Canadian technology workers working remotely for American companies here. So they get all those healthcare benefits, the Canadian lifestyle or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they contribute to the Canadian tax revenue. But the Canadian tech industry is not necessarily seeing that talent value gain in the ecosystem, because these folks work for American companies, especially in the startup world. We are constantly looking for new talents to actually grow the value of Canadian company. Wondering if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, I'm not in that space a lot with regards to the American companies who have Canadian talent here, and it's likely because they've got a Canadian entity and it's fairly easy for them to set up a Canadian entity, and Canada wants to attract obviously more companies to generate more economic growth here, but then that comes at the cost of taking our talent. So yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to say. I know that Communitech is starting to put a lot of spotlight on Canada needs to do more as a country to keep the talent we have here locally or nationally and grow that talent and give them incentives to want to stay here and want to work for a Canadian company. So there's a lot being put into, at least from Communitech side of thing as an advocate, to really lobby the governments to be doing more, because I do think it's at that level. So interestingly enough, our editorial team just launched a whole talent series this week. Tara, I'll follow up with the link to the articles, because there's a lot of really interesting data in these in this series that we've launched. So I think it'll be an interesting read for everyone.
Yeah, would love to share that out more widely with the networks. That would be all useful. Yeah. I think Romaine had another question as well. Thank you, Eugene.
Indeed, I do have another one. It's in regards to the immigration debt with the visas and all that application process. So correct me if I'm wrong, but as it stands right now, an employee, for example, would get their job offer, job letter, whatever it is, from the company, and then proceed to applying for their visa or work permit or whatever that is. Outpost, is it the same process with them, or you do all that and they don't have to worry about the full-on application process by themselves, or what's the help like in that regard?
Yeah, so we would manage the full visa application process. Yep.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Other questions? I was curious to hear if there's any market where it's like a real, I mean, like a hotbed of talent, and that where you're finding there's a lot of opportunity to hire there, or is it just sort of fairly evenly spread across the board, or just depends on the nature of the company?
So, I mean, I think it depends on the nature of the company and where they're trying to expand into. Certainly, Australia being a Commonwealth country, closely linked to Canada, and on obviously that time zone, for countries looking to expand into Asia Pac, certainly Australia is very attractive as opposed to, you know, like China or Japan, I'll say.
Yeah.
And then in Europe, it's interesting because a lot of the European countries are vary with regards to their employment law. So again, a lot of companies, Canadian companies, tend to stick to the UK because again, it's within the Commonwealth. You know, you share something with countries in the UK. So we see a lot of hires happening there as well. I think, you know, before you kind of decide on a country you want to expand into, it would be interesting to do some research on employment law in those countries. We do have country profiles on all the countries we hire in, which kind of gives a really snapshot view for you as an employer of what to be aware of if you're going to plan to expand into that country. You know, just really basic things you need to know about employment law, what's mandatory versus what's over and above. What do stat holidays look like? Some countries have 13th and 14th month mandatory pay. So you have to pay them 2 extra months salary, which is eye-opening for some companies. It's not 12 months a year, it's actually 14 months pay. So, you know, it's little nuances like that, that again, as an employer expanding into Spain, you would never even think of that. Some countries, you know, require a mandatory 2-week paid shutdown because of religious holidays and whatnot. So again, just things certainly that you would want to be mindful of as an employer before you decide, hey, I want to recruit somebody from this country. You know, making sure that you have a bit better of a picture on what it means to hire in that particular country.
Martin, go ahead.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for the presentation. That's an interesting project or program. We attract and incentivize a lot through our ESOP program as a technology startup. And just wondering through options, what restrictions or complications have if you're incentivizing employees all around the world with your options program? Thanks.
So you can still offer a company, or you can still offer employees stock options. We can't include it in the employment contract through Outposts because we can't control your stocks. Like we don't own your stock, we don't own your shares. So what a lot of employers will do is create a side letter that you have directly with that employee to manage any kind of, you know, incentive plan or whatever. Same with sales. If you're hiring a sales individual, we can certainly include in the employment contract that there will be some level of commission, but again, you would want a side letter direct with that employee to outline, here's our commission structure, here are, you know, the milestones you need to hit in order to actually get paid this commission. And you're the ones that are also going to be managing their performance and ultimately decide, did they meet their goal? Didn't they? So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but definitely would want to have side agreements for anything to do with commission or options.
It's your sense, though, that that is a typical arrangement that companies have that you work with that are in kind of the technology sector, that they're still incentivizing those employees through stock option programs?
Yep. Yeah. We see a lot of it still. It's one of the biggest questions we get when we're drafting the employment contracts is, can we include the stock option piece into the employment contract? And it unfortunately has to be a side letter, but we haven't had any problems with it yet.
Yeah. Thanks, Karen.
Terrific question. Kathy, is that a follow-up question you had?
Yeah, it was. I was really intrigued earlier when you referenced, companies actually hiring sales team members in other countries. And I think for companies that are trying to scale, especially some of the early stage companies that may be attending today, kind of thinking about that whole idea of having somebody in another country to sell is exciting. But maybe can you connect that idea to EDC and BDC services? I think there's people probably attending that would like maybe to get a bit more understanding of those kind of additional things that they might be able to connect with because they're actually going through the trade commissioners?
Yeah, so I think the benefit of being connected in with organizations like a BDC or EDC is understanding how they can support you scaling in that particular country. So EDC offers a lot of guarantee loans once you have a PO secured from, you know, a prospective client in that country, where if that company doesn't end up paying you, you're kind of backed by EDC's guarantee. BDC has a lot of lending solutions when it comes to expanding globally and how they can support you through some of their global solutions if you're looking at expanding in various countries. So it's more, I would say, on the financing side in how to support companies as they scale.
Thanks, that's very helpful.
You know, if there are any final questions, we're almost at time, and a lot of great insights, Karen, a lot of things to be thinking about. But what we'll do is we will share those follow-up publications or pieces that you mentioned, as well as the recording of this terrific presentation. And we really do appreciate your time today. I think everyone would take away a lot from your insights. And it's definitely a challenge, but Outposts will obviously make the process seamless. So I love that. So we appreciate everyone joining us today for on May 18th, we will have our next session with Jen LaPlante, who's the Executive Director of DeepSense. And she will be doing a session on scalable data management. So that's another great one not to be missed, another interesting topic on the other side of things. So thank you all, and hope you have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you soon. And thank you again, Karen.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure to talk to all of you. And if anyone wants to reach out and schedule some one-on-one time because there's a specific country you want to dive a little bit deeper into, happy to book some time with you and chat further.
Terrific.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.